You have done this before, not once, not twice. You have stood in this exact emotional spot, the same argument, the same relationship pattern, the same job frustration, the same promise to yourself that this time will be different, more times than you'd like to admit. And here's the part that should scare you a little. Your brain isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed, which means somewhere inside you there is a system running quietly in the background, choosing the familiar pain over the unfamiliar unknown again and again, without ever asking for your permission. This isn't a video about willpower. It's not going to tell you to just try harder, because if trying harder worked, you would have fixed this years ago. What you're about to hear is the real reason your patterns keep repeating, and why the very thing you've been calling a weakness might actually be the smartest, most protective part of you. Stay with this, because by the end, you're going to look at your own history completely differently. Think about the last time you said, "I'll never do that again," and then did it again. Maybe it was falling for the same type of person. Maybe it was staying silent in a meeting when you knew you should speak. Maybe it was reaching for your phone the moment things got quiet, or picking a fight right when things started going well. We like to believe humans are rational creatures who learn from pain and adjust. But that's not how the mind actually works. Your brain isn't trying to make you happy. It's trying to keep you safe. And safe to your nervous system simply means familiar. Not good, not healthy, familiar. This is why people return to relationships that hurt them, jobs that drain them, and habits that quietly destroy them. Not because they're weak, but because somewhere, a long time ago, that pattern once meant survival, and your mind never got the memo that the danger has passed. Here's where it gets interesting. Neuroscientists describe the brain as a prediction machine. It isn't just reacting to the world, it's constantly forecasting what's about to happen, based on everything that's happened before. This is sometimes called the brain's predictive processing model. Every experience you've had gets compressed into a kind of internal map, and that map is what your brain trusts. Even when the territory has changed, psychologists have another word for this, the repetition compulsion, a concept first explored by Sigmund Freud and later expanded by attachment researchers. It describes our unconscious pull toward recreating emotional situations from our past, especially painful ones, in an attempt to finally get it right, and there's a neurological reason this pull feels so strong. The amygdala, the brain's emotional alarm system, doesn't process time the way your conscious mind does. To the amygdala, an old wound and a new situation that merely resembles it can feel identical. So your body reacts to the present as if it were still living in the past. Add to this the basal ganglia, the brain region responsible for habits, and you get a system built almost entirely for repetition, not change. Habits are energy efficient. Change is expensive. Your brain, quite literally, chooses the cheaper option. This is not a character flaw. This is biology protecting itself, using outdated information. Picture Sarah, sitting in a job interview, brilliant and prepared. And yet, when asked to describe her strengths, her voice shrinks. She undersells herself, just like she did in school. Just like she did with her first manager who dismissed every idea she had. The pattern isn't about this interview. It's about every room she's ever felt unseen in. Picture a man named Daniel, who keeps choosing partners who are emotionally unavailable. Not because he enjoys the pain, but because his nervous system learned as a child that love had to be earned through effort and worry. So peace ironically feels unfamiliar, almost suspicious. Picture two friends who have the same argument every few months, not about the actual issue, but about an old wound neither of them ever named out loud. Picture the family gathering where one sentence from a parent, said in the exact same tone as 20 years ago, can shrink a grown adult back into a frightened child within seconds. None of these people are irrational. They are simply running old software on new hardware. Let's break this down into the patterns most people don't recognize in themselves until they hear them out loud. Sign 1. You recreate the same emotional ending, even with different people. Different faces, same heartbreak. This happens because you're not actually choosing people. You're unconsciously choosing a feeling that matches an old emotional blueprint. Psychologists call this attachment templates. The emotional consequence? You start to believe love itself is the problem, when really it's the pattern doing the choosing. Sign 2. You self-sabotage right when things start going well. Success feels foreign, so your mind manufactures a crisis to bring things back to familiar emotional ground. This is sometimes explained through the concept of homeostatic emotional range. Your nervous system has a comfort zone for how good or bad life is allowed to feel, and it will quietly pull you back if you exceed it. Sign 3. You over-apologize or over-explain even when you've done nothing wrong. This often traces back to childhood environments where love felt conditional. The emotional consequence is exhausting, constantly performing for approval that should have been unconditional from the start. Sign 4. You feel drawn to people who need fixing. This is rarely about them. It's about an old, unconscious hope that if you can fix this person, you can finally undo the powerlessness you felt fixing someone from your past. Sign 5. You avoid conflict until resentment builds, then you explode. Many people learned early that expressing needs led to punishment or rejection, so they suppress until the pressure becomes unbearable. The nervous system, not the person, decides when enough is enough. Sign 6. You repeat the same self-talk your parents or early caregivers used on you. This is called internalized voice, and it's one of the most invisible patterns of all because it doesn't feel like a memory. It feels like your own opinion of yourself. Sign 7. You chase validation from people who remind you of someone who once withheld it. This is the mind's attempt to finally close an old emotional loop, to get from a stand-in what you never received from the original source. Notice something? Every single one of these signs isn't really about the present moment. They're echoes, old conversations still playing just with new voices. If you felt a quiet ache while listening to this, that's not weakness. That's recognition, because somewhere inside you is a moment, maybe one you don't even consciously remember, where you learned that this is how love looks, this is how safety feels, this is how conflict goes. And your mind has been protecting that lesson like sacred information ever since, even when the lesson stopped being true. This is the loneliest kind of pain, repeating something you know is hurting you, and not understanding why you can't seem to stop. But here is where everything changes. You have not failed. You have been loyal to an old story, long after that story stopped being useful. Psychology doesn't ask you to hate the pattern. It asks you to understand it. Because the moment you understand why a behavior exists, it loses its invisible grip. Carl Jung once described this dynamic in a way that still resonates today. Until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life, and we will call it fate. What you've been calling the same mistake isn't proof that you're incapable of change. It's proof that a part of you is still trying to protect you, using the only tools it had access to at the time it learned them. You don't need to fight yourself. You need to update the map. First, name the pattern out loud. Neuroscience shows that verbalizing an emotional experience, a process researchers call affect labeling, reduces activity in the amygdala almost immediately. Simply saying, "I'm doing the thing again," out loud or in writing, interrupts the automatic loop long enough for your rational mind to step back in. Second, ask the pattern what it was trying to protect. Instead of asking, "Why do I keep doing this?" ask, "What was this behavior trying to keep me safe from originally?" This single shift moves you from shame into curiosity, and curiosity is the doorway out of repetition. Third, create a new experience on purpose in small doses. Since habits form through repeated experience, new patterns also form the same way, gradually. If you tend to avoid conflict, practice saying one honest small thing this week. Not the whole truth, just 1 degree more honest than usual. Neural pathways strengthen with repetition, meaning safety, too, can become a habit. Fourth, separate the person from the era. When old emotions rise in a new relationship, gently ask yourself, is this about now or is this about then? This single question, used consistently, retrains your brain to stop treating the present like the past. Fifth, build what psychologists call earned secure attachment. This means consciously choosing relationships, routines, and self-talk that offer the safety you didn't originally receive, until your nervous system slowly learns that this, too, can be trusted. None of this happens overnight. But every single time you catch the pattern instead of obeying it, you are quite literally rewriting the map your brain has been using for years. Maybe you didn't choose the moment your patterns were written. Maybe no one ever explained to you why you flinch at certain tones, why you leave before you can be left, why silence feels safer than being seen, but you get to choose what happens next. Think of your mind as an old house, built a long time ago by someone doing their absolute best with the tools they had. Some of the rooms were built for protection. Some were built out of fear. And for years, you've been walking through those same rooms, assuming they were the whole house. They were never the whole house. You are allowed to renovate. You are allowed to walk into the room marked, "This always happens to me," and quietly, patiently build a door where there wasn't one before. You are not doomed to repeat your story. You are only invited to finally understand it. And once you do, for the first time, you get to write what happens next. If any part of this felt like it was speaking directly to you, that's not a coincidence. That's your own mind recognizing itself. Tell us in the comments, which sign hit closest to home? Sometimes just writing it down and knowing someone else understands is the first step toward breaking the pattern. If this helped you see yourself a little more clearly, consider liking this video. It helps this message reach someone else who might need to hear it today. Share it with the one person you know is quietly repeating a pattern they don't yet understand. And if you want more videos like this, ones that don't just entertain you, but actually help you understand yourself, subscribe. This channel exists for exactly that. You've carried this pattern long enough. Let today be the day you finally understand it instead of just living it.